You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Curlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host, Miss Allie Garcet, who has got a new background today. You look like you got like a projector screen there or something. How are you doing?
I am good. I am actually in the middle of trying to fix this background, so therefore I blocked your view from the chaos. So I just put a projector screen on there. We're painting the wall, so that way we can put a new wallpaper, so I can finally add my Ally the Agent sign, the whole thing. Yeah, it's a mess right now.
Think of this as like the curtain, and it's everything else is backstage right now, and then it'll reveal and
Yes.
it'll be this beautiful ensemble. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, exactly. How are you, Craig?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a kind of a crazy week here. We had a fire just south of us, just north of us, moving south towards us. Like literally we were in like stage 1 evacuation, our zone, and like just a couple blocks down was stage 2. And what that basically means is stage 1 is like, okay, like get your bags packed, put them in your car, and if you get to stage 2, you got to get out, and you got to get out quick. And so we have like animals and stuff. And so on Friday, I was like on a call watching the smoke come up. Grace is texting me, and I'm like, kind of gotta get off this call. This is probably an emergency, right? But like it wasn't stage 2 yet. And so once I got off the call, I was like packing up. I lift our dog, we put him all into my truck, and we kind of just evacuated anyway for a few hours, and went to Chipotle because that's something that we like to do. That's something special for us. There's no Chipotle near us, so we have to go like 30 minutes. So when we go somewhere, it's like Chipotle is almost like a special thing for us now. And so yeah, that was kind of like our weekend, which was kind of crazy. How about you? Any crazy things happening with you?
I've actually been in a similar situation before because we have fires here out in Arizona too. And the last time was like 2 or 3 years ago. I was living on the other side of Tucson, in like the north, it doesn't matter. And I'm looking at the flames. And at the time, I called my first thought, I don't know, always real estate. My first thought was I need to increase my insurance limits in case this house burns to the ground, right? So I think we were also still in stage 1. I call the insurance company and I'm like, hey, is it too late because I was like, hey, I know that you probably know that there are Tucson fires right now. They're crazy. Is it too late to increase my insurance limits? And they're like, no, it's not. I'm like, really? As I'm on the call, I'm looking at the flames. I'm looking at the smoke. I'm like, really? It's not too late? Okay, let's increase it to the max. And I increased it, man, I like doubled it in value and it cost me peanuts. It was so worth it. So I can imagine like you might have to do like a couple of calls being if you have insurance for animals too. I never thought about that. But yeah, it's scary.
Crazy enough, I did not think at all about that.
Oh,
Might have to think about raising my insurance. One of my friends is like, living in the forest and stuff is really great until there's a fire, and then everything goes awry. Yeah. But there's fires happening all over now. I saw Maui, like behind
Maui.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what? How does Maui like rains every day, and it's like I don't know. It's crazy. So anyway, speaking of fire. We got a fire episode coming up right now with Mr. Nick Loper of Side Hustle Nation, aka the Side Hustle Show, which is a very, very, very popular podcast. If you're thinking about side hustling, if you've got some extra time, if you need maybe $1,000, $2,000 more a month to save up for your next house hack, or your job isn't paying you that well, whatever it is, right? Listen to this episode. Nick kind of shares his story about some of the side hustles he did, as well as some of the side hustles that others have done to again, to just make a little bit of extra money while kind of going out. I know, like, for me, before I became a real estate agent, I mean, this isn't like the most glorious side hustle, but I rented my car out on Toro. When it wasn't rented, I was Ubering. I was like kind of doing stuff like that was very easy because I knew it wouldn't be for very long. Did you have any random side hustles that you did?
I really was trying to think about what I could like use as a side hustle or do as a side hustle, but um the because I didn't have a lot of time and I was traveling a lot when I was still in the Air Force, my side hustle was actually getting my real estate license. So my side hustle became my exit instead of like just, some more of a hobby. So I used that side hustle time, like that little bit of extra time that I had while I was in the Air Force to get my license. And then that turned into my new career. That was my exit strategy to leave my W 2.
Yeah, I guess me too. I never thought about it like that. But yeah, I guess I was real estate agent as a side hustle for a bit. And then that's what got us to leave. And so, guys, like if you're thinking about getting into real estate and you want to become a real estate agent, hit me up, hit Allie up, right? We're both real estate agents. We're happy to answer any of your questions and, see, if being a real estate agent might be a good career for you. If you're in the Denver, San Diego market, let us know because we're the FI team is in those markets. And, we're always looking to add to the squad and add to the family. So with that being said, let's bring on Mr. Nick Loper. This episode of Investify was brought to you by the FI team, a team of investor-friendly agents that service all 50 states. If you are looking to house hack, to invest, grow your portfolio, and want a true investor-friendly agent on your side, go to thefiteam.com and click Get Started, and we can't wait to have a good conversation with you. Nick Loper, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today, dude?
Doing excellent. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. It's good to see you again. I know I was on your podcast a couple years ago now. It feels like too long ago since we've connected. Yeah.
Crossed paths at FinCon a year ago or so.
Yeah, we must. Yeah, FinCon. Yeah, so we've definitely, we're definitely in the same circles. And obviously you've got your amazing podcast, Side Hustle Nation. But why don't you tell us where you first kind of had that mindset shift from being like, that W-2 American dream type person to, okay, I'm going to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, it's weird how like deeply that stuff is ingrained. Go to school, get a good job, get good grades, get a good job, and like that's supposedly the end game. It's like, well, is it? Is that all there is? So probably before sophomore year of college, my roommate hands me this book. Longtime friend hands me this book. He's like, I think you'll like this, and it was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And this was kind of like solidified a lot of the thinking that was already going on in my head about buying and building assets rather than accumulating stuff. And the big takeaway is, okay, once your income from assets you control exceeds your monthly expenses, you're free. All of a sudden, like that was a really important light bulb switch. So it was this kind of like double-sided call to, keep your overhead low, so that hurdle is lower to get over, and just figure out how to build up some of this, cash flow that you have more control over than a day job.
I love that. So Rich Dad Poor Dad, that is definitely the inflection point in a lot of people. And so, I mean, you're in college. College is like perfect for priming you for this W-2 world. And so what did you change after you read that book? Because it was only your sophomore year.
Yeah, so I was really grateful to have already had this experience of running a painting business that first summer after freshman year. And it was one of these things where, the woman comes in, upperclassman comes into I think it was like a statistics 101 class or something. She's like, do you want a summer internship where you're going to learn entrepreneurship and sales and marketing and customer support? And, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. And it's one of these things where they don't tell you it's house painting until like, 3 or 4, 5 steps down the interview process. But by that time you're kind of like bought in and you're like, all right, I guess I could figure this out. I could do this. And while I'm doing this, I'm kind of like, is this a scam? Is this a pyramid scheme? And my wife is like, or my girlfriend at the time, my future wife, she's like, so what if it sucks? It's 3 months of your life. Like, it's not life threatening. Give it a shot. Go see what happens. And I think that's some advice I really took to heart then. And it's something I've passed along to hopefully a generation of side hustlers too. Like, what if it sucks? It's 3 months of your life. Give it a try. See what happens. Maybe you like it. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. But you can move on with that. So that was eye-opening. So I was doing the painting thing. and I interned at a online footwear retailer in Seattle, was where I went to school, and it was a family-owned brick and mortar shoe store that in the early days of the internet had this kind of crazy idea. Well, what if we put some of our inventory up online? Would anybody buy it? And so by the time I came on board as their marketing intern, of course, the e-commerce side of their business had grown way faster than that single location brick and mortar spot. And so that was my first exposure to search engine optimization, to e-commerce, to affiliate marketing, to pay-per-click advertising, all of that stuff that was really formative later on and kind of became the original side hustle of mine, which was a comparison shopping site for footwear.
Wow. So I think that's kind of crazy that you weren't afraid to say no to random opportunities that, especially when you're young, right? Like again, just test it out. And so do you think like you were kind of flexing your yes muscle by saying yes to the muscle thing, and then you got this, this internship and job at the e-commerce shoe store. Like, were those related at all? Like, do you think you've adopted some skills from the painting that you'd got that were adaptable?
Yeah, it was like, well, what do you have to lose? And this was very much, I think I was making $10 an hour doing that stuff, but it was a skill that was, it was new, it was exciting, it was interesting. It was, riding the bus to work, and it was very different from, painting houses and calling the shots and, really being in charge of your own schedule and cold calling for customers. But it was something that felt more scalable in a way. It was like, okay, if you get this ad that works, all of a sudden, that can have a lot more impact than just painting one house or knocking on one door. So it was something that was a little bit of a different flavor, but still had, a sense of entrepreneurial upside, I guess.
Okay. So how long were you at this company for?
Okay, short time, only maybe 8-9 months was all the internship lasted.
Okay. And so you were like a junior in college at this point?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And then so what happened?
Yeah, so post graduation is when, following that experience, I actually became an affiliate of that company and probably a dozen other footwear retailers, and said, what if, what if I could sell these shoes, through my own, and make a commission as an affiliate or a referral fee. So affiliate marketing, really quick, is like kind of a little bit outside of the real estate world, but it's essentially referring a sale, a product or service, and then getting a commission or getting a piece of that sale as a finder's fee. And so I started doing it just like with direct link text ads, like a budget of $1 a day on Google Ads. It's saying like, if you are searching for, this, New Balance model number XYZ, New Balance was great because they had very like specific model numbers that you could like bid on. My ad would show up, direct link to whoever I found had the best price. And so that was working, but it was also super tedious to, constantly be swapping out like, well, the price changed or this, size went out of stock or something. And it was kind of a pain. So my idea was, well, what if I could build up the comparison shopping engine for shoes and like have to do less of this day-to-day maintenance. I could just have one link that points to this listing page that has the 10 different stores that sell this product, and it would like automatically shuffle who's got the best price. That was the idea. And the idea, this was the era of, the price grabbers, the shopping.coms, the next tags of the world, like the heyday of price comparison shopping. And it's like, well, they're trying to be everything to everyone. What if I could niche down and just provide the best, comparison engine just for footwear? And like by virtue of having shoes in the name of the site, like my theory was, well, that would generate a higher click-through rate because it would appear to be more relevant. Like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about because it's only about shoes. And so set out to build that, and actually, used the proceeds from this, the lease option sale we mentioned before the call, which was my first and only foray into direct real estate ownership as a college junior or something. I remember signing the papers on this house, and it was, during the real estate run up of the mid aughts. That was timing wise better to be lucky than good in that sense, but it ended up working out, and that provided some seed capital to hire some developers to get this first version of the shoe business built out.
That's super cool, man. So I want to get into that lease option thing in a minute, but I just want to make sure I fully understand your affiliate marketing gig. And so basically, you've got this website, or it's not even a website at this point. but you basically have set up, you've got relationships with all these different footwear companies. You've got your specific link that goes to your specific thing. You then pay Google Ads and put your link on the Google Ads, and then people are going to click your link and that's the affiliate. And so like theoretically, couldn't the company just do that? Like have an ad and put Google Ads up, or were they just not smart enough or didn't want to tinker with it enough?
Yeah, they absolutely could, and some of them did. And so it was kind of, in their case, they saw it as a value add. Like, could we take up more real estate on the first page of Google? Like, if our affiliates are also promoting this stuff. And then the other side of it was just, we're focused on, the high level keywords: shoes, women's shoes, running shoes. Like, if you want to mess around down here with New Balance model XYZ, be our guest. Like, that's all incremental stuff for us. And so they left some of that stuff up to the affiliates.
And Google Ads specifically, that's like a whole nother topic in and of itself, like a whole nother skill set. How did you learn that skill set?
I was grateful to have, that was part of my responsibilities as the marketing intern. It was like they gave me control of a tiny subset of their Google account, because they were spending a ton of money on Google Ads trying to market their products for the shoe business. But it was like, okay, you can be in charge of these accounts. It's specifically like the reporting and performance side of things, which I love, that analysis of like, oh, look, how many people clicked on this versus how many people bought. I thought that was great. And so that was my early exposure to it. But it's, I run a little bit of paid traffic for Side Hustle Nation today, and it's a completely different ballgame. Like, it's always changing. There's so many different variables you can tweak. It's really interesting what you're able to do. But at that time, I thought this is the greatest marketing channel in the history of the world. Like, you can put your product or service in front of people who are typing in the exact thing that you sell. Like, that's fantastic. Like, that was a revolution in marketing in my mind.
And at that time, it was a revolution, right? There was nothing like that before. Now it's pretty typical, where it's like, you say something to a friend and now you're getting Facebook ads for it somehow. They're not listening though. But yeah, no, I think that's really cool, man. So I do want to get into the lease option thing, because we haven't touched on lease options much in this show. And so can you explain to us exactly what a lease option is, and like when it might be advantageous to use one?
Yeah, so lease option is kind of this, rent to own type of agreement. So me as the landlord say, hey, I'm going to rent you this property on a lease to own contract, where you're going to pay me essentially an above market rent, because you're eventually going to own this property, and you want to have some of that pride of ownership. And so it was a 2-year lease option contract, and at the end of that term, it had a set purchase price for the house, like based on what kind of appreciation we were seeing in the market. And actually, had the tenants paid their rent, like they would have gotten a good deal on the house, because the market was appreciating more than that at the time. But they had a really hard time paying the rent on time. So eventually you had to be like, you know what, you're in breach of your contract, so we're going to have to cancel that. And now the market price is this. So able to sell it for a little bit of a higher price at that point, after probably less than 2 years.
So you're able, okay, you're basically saying, like, let's just bring it to today's terms, just so it's easy to understand. So let's say it's 2023 right now, and you give a lease option to a current tenant on a property, and you say that's a 2-year lease option, and there's like basically a set sale price that you determine based on, let's say, 5% market appreciation. And so you're basically saying, okay, you're going to lease this price. You're going to lease this place from me. Typically, this might cost $2,000 a month to rent, but you're going to rent it from me from $2,500, because I'm going to give you this discounted sale price in a couple of years. And they're cool with that.
Yeah, and it's a way for them to get in without a huge down payment. So it's like, it was, maybe a little bit more than a typical, first and last month or security deposit, but it wasn't 20% down. And so it was, they have a little bit more buy-in than a typical renter would. And on top of that, they're like, okay, we're going to lock in this sales price. And so there's advantages on both sides, but of course, in hindsight, like, the sad truth is most of the lease option tenants don't end up exercising that option. Like, they just, it's sold as a tool where, like, hey, you got a couple years to get your credit together. You can go get traditional bank financing after a couple years when the term is up, and you can buy the home outright. But the sad truth is most people don't end up doing that. Like 2 years, they haven't gotten their stuff together to be able to do that. And so either you go find another tenant or you put it up on the market.
So it sounds like you put it up on the market then?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I guess, could you tell us if you remember the numbers, or even if they're just estimates, at like, what market rent might have been for your house, what you were getting, and then what you could have sold what you should have sold the house for if they had exercised that lease option, and what you actually sold the house for?
Oh gosh, it's been almost 20 years at this point. So purchase price was like, in the 270-ish range. The option price probably would have been around 300, but I think it ended up selling for around 330, 340. The rent that they were paying was around 2,100 a month, or market rent might have been 1,700. And so it was, I didn't have a ton of breathing room between my monthly payment because I did, I think, a 5% down, and again, I had no, like, I was a college student, didn't have any income. Like, who is just the heyday of, the real estate bubble market. Like, hey, sure, we'll give you a loan. You got this, you got a lease agreement from so pre-sold it to the tenant, or, pre-signed. So you got that. So you got this, rent spoken for. So I guess we'll count that as future income. And like, the margins were really, really thin had the appreciation not played a part.
Dang. Man, I wish we were around during those days. That sounds
to be young and have a much higher risk tolerance than today.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, no, thanks for that explanation, Nick. I think lease options are something that I just don't think are talked about enough, and especially in days of like, hey, if you've had a property for a while, you're thinking about selling it, not sure yet, the lease option is a great idea because you juice up a little bit more cash flow. You might be losing a little bit on the appreciation, but you also might be gaining a little bit, right? If the market does not appreciate at the rate that the lease option appreciated, what would the tenant typically just walk away? Or I guess it's up to them, right?
It's up to them. They could renew. They could just go back to a standard 12-month lease. They have different options at that point.
Very cool. Very cool. And so, okay, so you mentioned you sold your lease option for 330. How much did you end up pulling out of that to then fund your footwear business?
Yeah, so the net gain on it was, probably 50, 60 grand, which, coming maybe 1 year removed out of school, maybe even a little bit less, like that was big. Like that was a really important kind of leg up just in having some breathing room or having some runway. Ended up investing 10 grand in having this website built, which was a big chunk of change at the time. Again, he's like, I don't know if I would do the same. I don't know if I would recommend other people do the same, but this was pre WordPress. This was pre, a lot of the plug and play tools. It's like, I don't know how to run these big databases. I don't know how to, set all this stuff up. It's like, I could probably figure it out, but the site still might not be live. Like it was just the learning curve. How could I accelerate this by hiring somebody else? I remember meeting with this, I put this job up for bid on guru.com, which I think is still around, kind of like a precursor to, Odesk, Elance, Upwork. And one of the bids that came back was this guy who was like half an hour away from me. He was living in Northern Virginia at the time. So I go over to his apartment and he's like, yeah, we can build this. He's like showing me little mock-ups. And then he kind of realizes that it's, just this like 22, 23-year-old dude and not some big company. And he's like, oh, okay. For we'll lower this price a little bit. Cause he's like kind of starting to understand like I may not have as deep of pockets as some, enterprise client or something, but it was, that was interesting. I ended up working with him and his team for probably the next 10 years over the course of that business.
Wow. Okay. So you get this business up and running. And so it sounds like, you said that you had 10 years of history with it, which means it must have been successful.
Yeah, like it was a super roller coaster ride. It was like any software project, took twice as long to finalize as they said it was going to. But I still remember, I was working my day job and I was on the road all the time. So I remember like leaving the hotel in the morning and, had got a note, hey, the site's live. All right. Well, let me turn on a couple ads. Let's see what happens. Go out to work for the day, come back to the hotel that evening and hit refresh on the reports and had sold like, a $60 pair of shoes or something. I got like a $8 commission. And I was like, the eureka moment, like it works, it's alive, it finally works. And that was really, really cool. I was in a hotel in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and got my first sales.
It's amazing how having your first sale is almost like taking your first step. Like everyone remembers exactly where they were. I guess I don't remember where I was when I took my first step, but my parents probably do. But it's kind of like the same, that same thing where it's like I remember exactly where I was when I got my first commission as a real estate agent. And then Allie, do you remember where you were? Do you remember what deal that was and all that?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I even it was an extra step, or I think to wire the money it would have been minus $25. I was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna go drive over to the title company and pick it up. Not worth my time now, but I'm like, woohoo! I'm like driving to the title company. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah. No, that's awesome, Nick. And so you're in Chattanooga, Tennessee. You made this $8 sale, and then I feel like with all the setup that you did, instead of starting basically like an e-com, I mean, it's almost like an e-commerce site with these affiliate links. I feel like that's immediately scalable, right? Like now all of a sudden people can actually start coming on and start buying through your site.
Yeah, and so from then it just became a matter of building out keeping up to date with the inventory. So shoes, in hindsight, highly seasonal product with lots of turnover and lots of size considerations. Where it's like, well, the product itself isn't out of stock, but all that's left is a size 5.5 and a size 15. It's like, well, the conversion rate might be a little bit lower on that one. But so keeping up with that stuff and then just building out the catalog of ads pointing to these different shoes. And so a lot of seasonality, a lot of, daily, weekly upkeep on, making sure the site is accurate and up to date. But it was from that point, probably a couple years of nights and weekends to get it to the point where I felt comfortable, giving my notice at work, turning in the keys to the company car and saying, I guess I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a full-time internet shoe salesman. Let's see if I can cut my own paycheck. And it's still kind of a nerve-wracking decision. I was out to dinner with my boss in Eureka, California, and I'm on my second beer before I get up the nerve to finally tell him, this has been on my mind for months before this. I've got this, track record of revenue. I'm feeling pretty comfortable about this. I'm like, I'm going to do it. Okay, I'm going to go all in. And it's like this huge relief, this huge weight off my shoulders. And it felt great after that.
That's so amazing, man. And so what were you doing at work during this time?
So I was working for Ford on their service and parts side of their business as a dealer rep. And so at the bottom rung of this, 100-year-old, Fortune 500 company, the car business is fascinating. And so we'd go interface with their dealers and try and get them to sell more parts, especially on the maintenance side. In their business, they had gotten the dealers had been fat and happy off of, back when market share for Ford was, double what it was, and the cars were half as good. And so they were like, oh, we got all this warranty work coming in. We got huge capacity in the service department, and the cars are coming in. They're, the factory's paying for these warranty repairs. This is great. Start selling fewer cars, start building better cars. And all of a sudden they're like, well, we got all this capacity. What do we do with it? And so it was a lot of work on, building up the retail, the maintenance side of things, and trying to be competitive on that front.
I want to talk about, so going slightly back to that emotion, but also the logic behind deciding to leave your W-2. Looking back now, what advice would you give to others who are also doing some sort of side income, have some side hustles where they might be stuck in that analysis paralysis? They might see the revenue that they're making, but they're still too scared emotionally to pull the trigger.
It's a big decision, and over 500 interviews on the Side Hustle Show, we've seen the entire spectrum from people who are like, I hate my job. I'm not going to this cubicle one more day. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out on my way down. And it's like, okay, that's kind of terrifying to me, but if that burn the ships mentality works for you, okay. And then on the far other side, we have people it was literally costing me money to go to work. I was making more from my side hustle. And it's like, well, that's a good problem to have. The sweet spot, I think, is probably somewhere in the middle. And that's where I was, where, I had this track record of profit from the business where, going back 6 months, 12 months, however long you're comfortable with, to be reasonably confident it will continue. And also to say, I don't think it was replacing my full day job salary at that point, and it was helpful. I wasn't making that much. It was probably at like 50 grand a year at this job, where you see other people with like multi 6-figure salaries. It really becomes the golden handcuffs. Like that's a lot harder to walk away from. But it was to the point where it was covering my expenses. Where okay, at least I'm not going to have to go backwards. At least I'm not going to have to dip into savings, and then to have a little bit of savings cushion too. If you're taking that entrepreneurial leap, have a 6-month runway, just because you never know what's going to happen. And in fact, the business blew up like 2 weeks after, like probably was like the day after. I feel like my first day of self-employment, like my Google ad account gets shut down, the website has crashed, like everything that could go wrong did go wrong early on. It's like, what did I do? What did I just do? This is awful.
I love your whole story, Nick, about like just that transition of building up the side hustle to a point of where you feel comfortable switching. And it sounds like you still made that move before you're actually making as much. I think I was more of a chicken than you. I waited until I was making like 2 or 3 times as much at my side hustle than I did to quit my job. And but I've got a question for you here is like, obviously that's a lot of work. Did you find yourself working your side hustle at your day job? Assuming no one from Ford is listening to this.
Yeah, no, I tried to keep it separate because it was on the road all the time. So it would have been difficult to like, pull up a personal laptop and find a coffee shop. It would have been, it was a different era. So it would have been a little bit challenging to do that. So try to keep those separate. But so I would bring my work laptop and my, business laptop, my personal laptop, like to the hotel rooms. And so I like get back, go to dinner, do my workout, and then like catch up on email from the day from work, and then like fire up the shoe business and see what I could sell or see how the business did that day, or try and build some more ads or something.
Super cool. Super cool. And so at this point, when did you try to, you mentioned there was a lot of ups and downs, your computer crashed and all that. Can you talk to us a little bit about the ups and downs of entrepreneurship that you faced and how you kind of got through them?
Oh my gosh, it was, I thought the business was reasonably diversified because they had like, 20 different advertising partners, but peeling it back one layer, like 80% of the traffic came from Google ads. And so one day they were like, hey, your website no longer meets our quality guidelines. Thanks so much for your business for the last 3 years. We never mentioned this before, but you can no longer advertise with us. It's like, I literally just quit my job, like to do this. Like what, you go through the 7 stages of anger and denial and regret and ultimately acceptance. And you're like, well, because they don't tell you like, what did I do wrong? Well, what happens? And they're like, well, the sole purpose of your site is to drive traffic to other sites. I'm like, Google, look in the mirror here. It was just, it was a very frustrating time. Ended up having to revamp a lot of the landing pages, just kind of technical stuff, like more internal links versus straight external links, adding some, template driven content about the product, just kind of weird stuff. But 3 months later, they come back and they say, oh, looks like we made an error. You're good to go. I'm printing a hard copy of this email in case you ever like try and pull this shenanigans again. But it was a very stressful summer, that first summer after leaving the job. But it was, that was just kind of a little bit of foreshadowing of the entrepreneurial roller coaster, because there were good times, there were bad times, and it was just like, that's what you signed up for. That's what you got to deal with. And same thing, with the Side Hustle Nation business. It's like, you're doing really well with some affiliate program and they pull the rug out from under you. It's just like, build up diversification, both in terms of income sources, but in terms of traffic sources, and then trying to, take some chips off the table and put those into, I know in your case, like put those into hard assets, into real estate, but, in my case, like often like dividend paying stocks or REITs, where it's like, I don't want to deal with direct ownership right now, but like I'm a believer of the benefits of real estate and passive investments. Like, how do I take some of these gains off the table into something that can really, really pay over and over again?
So how many years were you kind of doing, or from what years were you like, okay, you quit your job in whatever year, and then how long were you just doing that shoe business for, before you kind of had enough of that?
Yeah, I quit the job in 2008 to go full-time as a shoe salesman. Eventually shut that business down in 2014. As it played in the margins between the cost of traffic, the cost of those ads, and then what that traffic was worth in terms of affiliate commissions, and like just start getting squeezed on both sides of it over the course of 6, 7 years, 8 years of doing it. And yeah, so there were some lean months in there where it's like, I don't know if this is really worthwhile anymore, because on the side from it started half a dozen other projects, which, for full disclosure, most of which died a quiet death in some lonely corner of the internet. But a couple of them stuck around. One was Side Hustle Nation, started 2013, and the other was a virtual assistant review site and directory, which started 2011. This was like Yelp for outsourcing companies, born out of my own struggles and questions and mindset issues around hiring virtual help. Like, are these companies legit? Like, are they going to steal my ideas? How does it work with taxes and stuff? So built up this directory very slowly over the years, and that was another one of the 2 side projects from the shoe business that actually worked.
Did you try to sell your shoe business at all, or were you just fed up? And
in hindsight, I wish I had sold it at its peak. Of course, I mean, that would have been a life-changing exit at its peak, but didn't really know that was a thing, and honestly didn't have anything really to fall back on at that time. So I was like, well, I thought I could just be the dude who sells shoes for forever, not really realizing that it had a finite lifespan.
we hope this episode is inspiring you to take action. If you're thinking about becoming a real estate agent or an agent who wants to join an investor-friendly team, just hit me up on Instagram at the Fi Guy, because we are growing our team in Denver, Seattle, San Diego, and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but also adding to our network in all 50 states. And if you didn't already know this, the Fi team provides a super supportive environment with one-on-one coaching, accountability, and ongoing training to help develop kick-ass, rock star, investor-friendly real estate agents. So hit me up on Instagram at the Fi Guy, shoot me a DM, and we'll set up a time to chat. Can't wait to chat with you.
In your businesses now, what are your favorite tools that you use? Because I imagine as you're talking about your businesses that Zapier might be a system that you use. What else do you use in order to just in your day-to-day operations that saves your butt?
Saves my butt. A ton. So rely heavily on WordPress for the site itself. ActiveCampaign is my email list provider. Teachable is where I sell my digital products, my courses. Swear by LastPass just to manage all these different logins. I really like Affluent. Affluent.io is affiliate tracking aggregator, pulls in probably 70-ish% of all the different programs that I'm a part of into one central dashboard. There's a ton. I use Otter.ai. I think Otter.ai for podcast transcriptions, which I can mark up and send off to the editor. We're using Descript for editing videos and stuff, or my assistant or my video person does that. We're living in a beautiful time with lots of different tools.
That's awesome.
So awesome, Nick. So what I love about your story so far is that before you end one thing, you're kind of starting something else, right? It sounds like you ended your shoe thing in 2014, but not before you had your virtual assistant company and Side Hustle Nation starting in 2011 and 2013 respectively. And so why, I definitely want to get into Side Hustle Nation, maybe just because that's how I know you. Is the VA thing, is that still up and running and kicking and doing really well? Or what happened with that?
I learned from the shoe business and did sell that in 2020. Had to say goodbye to that. Is my time during lockdowns and stuff. My time to work on it was really dedicated to watching the kids instead. And so it's it's still holding steady, but if it continues in this state of benign neglect, it's going to start to decline, and then valuations go down as a result. So put that up for sale, and ended up selling. It was kind of a lowish 6-figure sale, so not necessarily retire forever, but it felt good to have that win under the belt, and just to not have that mental bandwidth of being in 2 industries at once.
And how did you go about selling this business? How'd you find a buyer? How'd you get the valuation?
In this case, it was through a service called Onfolio, where I don't know if they still have it, but Onfolio is kind of a website management service and investment platform. So at a time, they had this button at the top that said, sell us your site, or, have a site to sell. Like either they were looking to acquire it or partnering with different investors. And that was the case in this time. So they had partnered with a first-time investor, I guess, had reached out to them and said, hey, we're looking for a site to buy. Let us know if anything pops up that meets this criteria. And, within a few months, like this was one that did. And so it was a pretty quick turnaround. And like maybe it could have gone for more or a higher multiple going on a different brokerage, but then you would have a 15% brokerage fee. And so like it probably knocked down to be about even on that.
Did you have any employees or anything at this company?
Had a couple VAs that helped me out. One guy in particular was the writer for all the articles. I was actually really proud of the system. So I would have one of the virtual assistant services that was on the site. They would, do all the initial research whenever we'd have a new company come across the radar, and then send it off to this guy who would write it all up, and then another person would upload that into WordPress. It was like relatively, I was trying to practice what I preached on the site and really leverage some delegated help for it.
Awesome. So did you let the VAs know, or did the VAs go with the company to the new buyer?
The writer did. Yeah, the writer continued writing for them for some time afterwards, and gave him a big fat bonus when that wire transfer came through. Like, thanks for all your help over the years.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think that's extremely important too. When if anyone listening does decide to sell a business, is like treat your employees right. That's one thing that, I have to commend Bigger Pockets for doing, is that, when they ended up, just kind of restructuring their organization, the owner at the time, Josh, like he did pay his employees like all a pretty hefty bonus. Like, and it was, I don't know, it just really resonated with me the right way. And I'm like, that's exactly what you need to do. There's nothing in the contract that says who's required to do that. He just did it out of the kindness of his heart. And I think that's extremely important, like when taking care of your people. All right, so let's get into Side Hustle Nation. So the birth in 2013, how'd you come up with the idea, and what did it start out as?
So this is something that I'll turn around and ask anybody listening. It's like, what, if you're looking for a niche to go after, like, what are you obsessed with? What do other people already ask you for help with? What do you have some perceived expertise in? And what do you never get tired about talking about? And for me, it was this, I'd already started the shoe business, had like a little bit of side hustle, credibility, so to speak. But on top of that, I loved deconstructing whatever random businesses I could find. People would start sending them to me like, hey, get a load of this. How does this business make money? That 0 to 1 of like, how'd they get their first customers? How'd they get that initial idea and traction? And then that, 1 to 10, like, how did they scale that thing? How do they, really grow that into something meaningful? Like, those questions were fascinating then. And 10 years later, they still are. Like, I still get a kick out of scooping new stories, new creative ways. Like, oh, I never would have thought of that. And just, just people pitch me all the time. And it's like, wow, I've been doing the show for 10 years. We never did an episode about selling plants out of a backyard nursery, or doing a travel blog out of Mexico, or like, just, I love all this. I love all that stuff. And the reason I bring that up is I don't think you're going to be able to compete in a niche unless you are that obsessed, because somebody else is going to be. And if you're phoning it in, and if you're just saying, well, the keyword research led me to this topic, like, that's going to be really hard to compete with somebody who lives and breathes it all day long. And, I give the example of like travel points and miles. Like, I love travel hacking as much as the next guy. I love me a big credit card bonus, but I am not going to be the people who are like, there, well, here's how you're going to optimize. You get this, Emirates lie flat private suite thing. It's like, I don't know. It's not super relevant to me and my lifestyle right now. Like, I'm not going to be able to compete with that. That's what it's going to take to be at the top of that game.
Totally. Anytime I hear someone like, I do the very basic credit card hacking, sounds like the same as you, Nick. Anytime I hear someone talking about like trading in credit cards and transferring points, and it just feels like there's all those planes with like the white streaks, behind them, just like going around my head, like 18 of them. And like, that's like the feeling I get.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. But like, so you really have to like embed yourself in that industry. And it was the same thing for the VA site. Well, I mean, part of it is like, what are you excited, interested in, curious about now? And could you see yourself doing that for the long term? It's like the same thing with the painting thing. Like, I don't really know about painting, don't really care about this. Like it was kind of an opportunity that happened to come by. But over the course of doing it for a couple of years, you kind of become somewhat obsessed with it. You can't help but walk past somebody's house, like, oh, look at that peeling, up under the eaves. I get up on a ladder and scrape that off, or come by, better give these guys an estimate this weekend to see what goes on. And there's some research like, Dan Pink and Cal Newport kind of have some research to back this up, that, passion tends to come from doing the work rather than, build a business around your passion. Like it can go both ways. So if you're looking in the mirror and say, well, I don't know what I'm passionate about, it's like, well, pick something that you're good at or curious about, and you often find the passion develops over time.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it that way before, but I'd say you're right. I don't know. I'm just thinking about my own personal examples of like house hacking, real estate, and all that. Like I had no idea that I'd be known as like the house hacking guy and write the book on house hacking. But I started house hacking and started like realizing all the benefits and how to kind of like craft the house in a way. And I was like, oh, this is like really fun, and I'm decently good at it. And then I became passionate about it. So I think it's almost it is probably more often than not that the work comes first and the passion then comes after.
Yeah.
And so, Nick, I want to hear like some of your what are some of the more popular side hustles that people maybe just starting out can do that are give us like a couple of your favorite ones. There's ones that you'd recommend after hearing thousands of them at this point.
I mean, the big three buckets that most side hustles, most businesses for that matter, are going to fall under: selling a product, selling a service, or creating a content-based business. And so that's kind of where I have played for most of the past 10 plus years, is in this audience-based or content-based business: blog, podcast, YouTube, social media. Like, okay, if I get people to pay attention to me, hopefully what I have to say is helpful / interesting, like then X, then, question mark, step 3, profit. But it's like, you got options. Once you got eyeballs, once you have attention, you got options. You can sell your own products and services. You can monetize with advertising. You can monetize with affiliate relationships. And those are the two areas that I tend to play the most. Really all three, but the two biggest would be advertising and affiliate relationships. But the first two, much, much faster to get started with, because you don't need to spend these years. It was probably 3 years before it was a meaningful income from advertising and affiliates, like for Side Hustle Nation. You don't have to spend the years of building up that audience if you're going the product or service route. In fact, most Side Hustle Show guests, or more Side Hustle Show guests, started with a service-based business than any other model. And the reason for that is that may not be where they ended up, but that was kind of step one on the ladder. Like, low overhead, low risk. What problem can I solve? Who can I solve it for? Let's go out, get a customer, and prove to ourselves that, yes, we're more than what it says on our paycheck. Like, we're more than what it says on our business card. Like, I have merit and value in the marketplace outside of my day job.
Yeah, I love that. Can you give us some examples of service-based businesses?
Oh my God. We have done, on the blue collar side of things, we've done episodes on mobile car detailing, window washing, pressure washing, remote house cleaning, where the owner of the company was like, I was looking at what niche to go into. I was looking at Yelp reviews for cleaning services. And what was funny was nobody complained about the cleaning. They complained about the company was hard to get a hold of. It took forever to get a quote. Nobody answered the phone. He was like, well, shoot, I could find people who know how to clean. I'd just be a better marketer, a better administrator. And so he's like just playing matchmaker, essentially. It's like, wow, and making a margin on between it. So some of those offline businesses, I think lower competition depending on what geographic area you're in, where, if you're bringing a little bit of digital marketing savvy to it, I think you can play really well in that space. And then on the online side, we've seen people do, graphic design and freelance writing and web design. And, I did proofreading and editing for nonfiction books for a while. We've seen people do coaching and consulting, would fall under that bucket too. Just finding the key here is that you're finding what problem can you solve, and hopefully can you solve it over and over again, like bonus points if it's recurring revenue. Like, we had a woman doing pet waste removal, and she's like, man, as long as that dog is still around and as long as they're still in that house, they're going to have this problem. So I keep coming back every week, recurring revenue. And so we find that service businesses, especially services with recurring revenue, are an attractive place to start.
And it seems that services also, the nice thing about it is that you're trading your time, right? So there's not really a big upfront investment. I mean, maybe maybe $1,000, right, to get the tools you need to do the task and maybe start a website or something. But like creating a product, you need to kind of create something which is going to inherently cost money and time, and then you have to sell it consistently to have that margin to actually replace it.
Yeah. I mean, my wife's side hustle for the last 10 years has been wedding photography, family photography. My brother, was a tutor and then did freelance tutoring on the side, and now has built up his book of business where he's, freelance full time. There's lots of different examples of, what different niches could you go into? And then the question kind of becomes like, how does this scale if you even want it to? I mean, you can scale by raising your rates. You can scale by hiring subcontractors. You could, scale by productizing, where it's like, okay, for a flat fee, this is what you get. And it doesn't necessarily matter if you're the expert delivering that. I think it's a really interesting place to play and really build up kind of the entrepreneurial skill set of sales and marketing, and being kind of the director of your own time, which is, that was something that I think a lot of people maybe struggled with early on in the pandemic. Like, I'm working from home for the first time. And like the temptation of the fridge is always there. Like the snacks are always there. Like, oh, I gotta be calling the shots here. I gotta be a little more self-motivated if I'm doing this as a side hustle.
Yeah. Okay. I've got another question for you here. Let's say someone goes in, right? They start a side hustle. They're making money from it, so then they like it, but they really don't like the underlying work as much, and they find themselves, but they stay because of the money. But honestly, they basically golden handcuff themselves. Like, at what point is there any way that you've seen people be able to recognize that? I'm just thinking of a particular friend of mine, who stuck in this business for way longer than he needed to. Now he's trying to sell it, and it's like everything's kind of going haywire on him.
Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in, and the last thing you need is a second job that you hate, or that you come to dread. And that's kind of my decision-making framework for when's the time to throw in the towel on, all of the, dozens of side projects that didn't really work out. It's like, when is the time to throw in the towel? When you come to dread the work. Like, I'm not seeing the traction. It's a little bit challenging here because I was seeing the traction in the case of your friend. And it's hard to walk away from that income that you probably came to rely on. So what I would look at is, itemizing out and maybe even doing a time audit of, where are you spending your time? Are the hours that you're putting in, do those need to be done by you, or could you delegate some of the tasks that you don't like? Because I found, like, I enjoy playing, content creator. I love playing, the analysis game and playing like Puppet Master Experimenter. Like, what if I tweak this thing? Or what if I, move this around in this article? Is that going to improve its rankings? Like, I love all that stuff. But some of the, tedious day-to-day, like, editing the show, editing the video, going through, there's a lot of other stuff that is less exciting that other people are able to take off my plate.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's always an important thing, is if you're not happy, doing that time audit, and you can either systematize it, automate it, or delegate it. So awesome, Nick. This has been an amazing episode, man. It's been great to have you on. I guess what's next for you? Like, are you just going to continue to grow Side Hustle Nation, or are you starting this other side hustle that may replace that someday?
I need to find the next thing. Like, I don't know. It's been an awesome journey for the last 10 years. People ask me all the time, like, dude, you going to do another 10 years of these? You got another 500 episodes in the can? And the answer has always been, as long as it's fun and rewarding, I'll keep doing it. And so far, that's the case. Like, I wrote as far as like near-term projects, I wrote a children's book over the summer based on an imaginary cheetah character that my son invented. He was like 4 at the time, and he came up with this vegetarian cheetah that eats fish sticks and glitter toast. And I was like, you can't make this stuff up. Like, the world needs to know about Rita the cheetah. So Rita the cheetah is written, but I need to find an illustrator for it. I was like, I thought writing was going to be the hard part. Like, so far, the illustration part has definitely been the bottleneck there. But it's these little fun experiments. I always get a kick out of those, and then continuing to kind of tweak and optimize the business itself. Like the website, the SEO game is probably a bigger piece of the pie than the podcast itself. But it's always difficult to dedicate time to it because the podcast is genuinely more fun. Like, oh, I get to talk to interesting people and share their stories. But it's, I don't know, never a dull moment over here.
Yeah. So what are some of the people that you've got hired now in your business now that you're at, year 10 and, you're maybe at scale?
So it's probably going to sound daunting, but we do run really, really lean with a handful of kind of on-demand contractors, specialists, and agencies. So, for example, podcast editing service, website maintenance service, which is like, in WordPress, if I want to move this thing over here, I don't want to break my site, like they can do it. Or if some plugin breaks it, like, okay, they can go troubleshoot that. Dedicated to kind of like general admin assistant who's in my inbox doing just email triage plus some weekly, upload the podcast to the hosting provider, like spot check, make sure the ads are in there in the right spot. We've got a woman doing, slicing up the videos, trying to play the short form content game, which is super difficult for me. Like my sweet spot is that 2,500 word blog post or that 45-minute podcast interview. The people who can tell a compelling story on TikTok in 45 seconds. I respect that skill. We're still trying to figure that game out. Another kind of admin assistant, for just weekly reporting type of stuff, like or one-off type of tasks. But generally, we run really lean because I don't know, I have this fear, and maybe it's having been burned by the shoe business, have some fear of like, well, if it all comes crashing down and I no longer have the revenue to support this big team, like then that turns into some really difficult conversations. And so even if I'm doing more work myself than maybe I should, like that's where I've been most comfortable. But it's definitely I don't know, I'm my own bottleneck, and I will openly admit that.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are in that boat. And then with your investing yourself, you mentioned you're just kind of into the stock market. Are you just like index fund, REIT kind of guy, or do you do anything cute in the stock market?
Cute would be an interesting word. Like starting 2015 or so, I'm always the person who thinks the market is like due to crash. And, it's probably because, you've probably seen the meme where, over the last 100 years, it's almost always at an all-time high. And it's like, well, I don't want to buy at the top. So what I convinced myself to do instead was to buy for cash flow. And so really focused on, dividend kings, dividend aristocrats, these companies, blue chip companies with long histories of paying and growing dividends. And that helped me get off the sidelines and build up, what I call my cash flow portfolio to the point where it's spinning off a few $1,000s a month at this point. And that's been kind of my take there. But, index funds plus a handful of selected individual stocks, trying to get out of those, honestly. Just I don't want to deal with the roller coaster anymore, but that's kind of been where I've been putting the excess cash flow.
No, I love that. I love that you're able to, kind of just stay concentrated on your business and have your personal investing just be pretty passive. I think that's a position that I'd love to be in. I'm getting there, but.
All right.
So Nick, what does I know that you mentioned you are going to hold on to like doing the side hustles or Side Hustle Nation and other projects pretty much until it stops being fun, which is the best position to be in. But do you know what the future holds for you? Like what's next for you that you're excited about?
I mean, I'm like all of my problems are, super like annoying first world problems. Like, dude, you have a great life. You got a couple of healthy kids, like none of this stuff is even worth complaining about. But, so our kids are 7 and 5. And so been super, super grateful to be able to take a bunch of time off with them over the summer. Like I remember summer breaks being this very magical time as a kid and being pretty depressed. Like that first summer at Ford being like, oh, there's no summer break like for grownups. Like this is, I don't know, that for whatever reason, like struck me as really kind of a painful moment. Even though I was excited to start that new job. So spending time with them and hopefully instilling some values, like almost stoic values of, you don't always get to choose what happens to you, but you do get to choose how to react to it. And hopefully instill some of these entrepreneurial values, because they're starting to ask questions of like, well, how do I go and make money? How do I get famous? Like, well, you don't need to get famous to make money. Like, so they have some interesting questions at that age.
Totally. Awesome. Nick, well, it's been a pleasure, man. I think we're heading into now the final part of our show. Before we get there, Do you have any other parting words of wisdom that you want to share with our audience?
Parting words of wisdom. What I would encourage people to do is position side hustles as an experiment in your mind, kind of like what my wife said when we were still in college. Like, look, give yourself 3 months. It might suck. It might not. You never know. So think about that. Scientists in the lab, have a hypothesis to test. Maybe the test tube blows up in your face. More likely than not, it won't. But it may or not. It may not. It may not be a game changer for you. But it's like, okay, you learn something every step of the way, and you can tweak that. Like I had read at, I don't know if this is true or not, but like at any given point, Amazon is testing like 1,000 different variables on their site, trying to eke out, 0.001, whatever the next, conversion rate improvement is. I think we could apply that same experimenter's mindset to our own lives, whether it's related to business or just your personal health or your relationships, whatever it is, on a smaller scale. So always have a few different experiments going on and seeing what those results are and if you like them.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, I mean, that's what life is, right? Just iterate, just like, test and iterate. And usually how you start something is not how you finish it. So, awesome. Allie, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the
The
final four.
Bum. Perfectly choreographed. Nick, these are the same 4 questions we ask everybody. Allie, why don't you kick us off?
You might be more of a podcast guy, but if you are reading any books, what book are you reading right now?
Brain Energy is on my Kindle right now. And this is a somewhat new release about what the causes of mental illness are. And in the author's thesis is that mental illnesses are metabolic diseases of the brain, if I'm phrasing that correctly. And so talking about how things like sleep and diet and relationships like all play a much bigger role than previously thought. And so I'm like, I'm probably on chapter 4 or something. Like I'm early on in this book, but that's what's on the nightstand right now.
Ooh, I'll have to add that to my list.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Nick, what's the best piece of advice you ever received?
It's not a piano. So is my dad. We were building a deck at our new house, and he's trying to line everything up. Not to say he didn't care about quality, but it's just like, look, sometimes done is better than perfect. It's not a piano. Not everything has to be like, to the nth degree of confidence. Like, look, it's still standing. So we must have done an okay job.
I love that. Yeah, just keep going, right? Don't be a perfectionist, because that will kill you. Unless you're building pianos. Any side hustles for piano builders?
We had a guy who was doing piano tuning, and it was fascinating. He said he started out, the inspiration for this was like, I was calling around trying to get my own piano tuned. Everybody in this business, he said, was like 75 years old, didn't have a website. Even one guy agreed to show up, didn't show up when he said he was going to, like just completely no show. Like, are these guys so busy that they can't show up for $100 an hour to tune my piano? So he teaches himself how to do this. I think he had like an app to help him too. Of course, there's an app for this, and goes out and starts selling the service locally. I forget how much he made, but he was like, it was so easy to get business because nobody else even wanted it. Like there was like 2 other players in town and they were just old and tired and they wanted to retire.
That's so funny.
Wow.
Yeah,
we had a guy actually, another side hustle. We had Jacques Hopkins, the online course guy. He runs a site called Piano in 21 Days, teaching how people to play modern songs on the piano in record time. And he's built this incredible business off the back of this, novel approach to learning piano.
All right. Question number 3. What's your why?
That's my why. It's really having time freedom over my calendar. I remember, early on in my job at Ford and, started midway through the year. So I had 5 vacation days and the next year it went to 10. And I was like, man, I'm living on the other side of the country for my family. 5 vacation days doesn't do a whole lot. And it just felt almost childish having to ask my boss for like, can I take this time off? It was like, can I go to the bathroom? Like it just felt weird. It felt like very like diminishing in a way. I don't know. So really a strong motivating factor for me was having control over my calendar. And even after leaving my job, the storms would be coming through. You could kind of see it lining up on the weather report, and like Tuesday is going to be a great powder day. And I remember texting all my friends like Tuesday's the day, let's hit it. And they'd be like, dude, I got to work. Like, you're so lame. Like I got to work too, but I just do it the next day. Like, the storm's only good, at this time. So I'm trying to be in control of that and helping other people build a little more control over their calendars as well.
Yeah.
Love that. It's all about that independence. All right, Nick, final question. Have you ever fallen off your bike in front of a huge crowd?
I have not, but I did swallow my bubble gum at a bubblegum blowing contest, which is probably my most embarrassing. I walk in there, I'm probably 7 years old. I walk in there like, oh, I'm going to own these people, like just with all the confidence of a 7-year-old, and just like, because you really got to, we got to work it, brand new piece. Okay. You're chomping so hard, like try to get it to that, bubble blowing consistency. And then like that gulp, like, and you're looking around to both sides. I go find my mom, like the walk of shame over there. It was so bad.
Dang, that's actually really funny. Wait, so I didn't even know the bubble blowing contest were a thing. Like, what bubble? Does everyone have to use the same gum? Is there consistency there? Like everyone's using Bubblicious or whatever?
Yeah, I think everybody got one piece of double bubble or one, This was, this is at the local science center. Like every summer they did Bubble Fest, and they had the big balloon wands and everything else. And part of it was this bubble gum blowing contest that I was confident that I was going to destroy everybody, and absolutely did not.
There you go.
So what's the bike story, Craig? I take it this question has a backstory.
Oh no, it was just a random question. I mean, I guess I have fallen off my most embarrassing bike fall off was probably I was in San Francisco living there at the time, and I was riding my bike, and I always had to cross these train tracks, and it was awkward because I kind of had to cross them parallelly, if that makes sense. So like my bike was going with the train track, and one time I just didn't quite cut it at enough of an angle, and I just fell right in like the trolley train tracks of San Francisco, like in a very populated, very touristy area. And the train was coming, and so I got super scared. And so then I like took my bike and I just like threw it, and then I rolled. And I was like, all right, I'm good. Yeah,
talking.
I was good.
My
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
That's
So
crazy. We actually have a kind of similar story, Craig. Same thing with like the train tracks. I have fallen off, and it was here in Tucson, the corner of 4th and Congress. Everyone knows where that is. It's like the U of A has little, trams, trolleys going about. I also did not cut my back wheel at that 90-degree angle as I should have. My wife is like ahead of me, and but she's like too far ahead, and this is like I'm picking up speed because there are cars right behind me. I'm not good on a road bike. Man, I fall. Luckily, I was wearing a helmet because my head bounced like a basketball, and I got a concussion. Still have tinnitus or tinnitus, however you want to pronounce it. To this day, it's bad.
Ouch.
yeah, wear your helmet has saved my life multiple times.
Saved my life.
Wear your helmet. Awesome, Nick. Okay, where can people find out more about you, Nick, when they're not falling off bikes and when you're not winning bubblegum contests?
Well, thanks so much for having me. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Of course, we'd love to have you tune into the Side Hustle Show. You can find it on all your favorite podcasts. If there's 500 episodes, if you're not sure where to start, hustle.show. We'll build you a personalized playlist after you answer a few short multiple choice questions over there. And if you're kind of in this, I don't know what to start. SideHustleNation.com/best is our updated annually list of the best side hustles of the year. So kind of a curated pick for you, a couple different options to get started with.
Love it, man. So yeah, definitely go check out the Side Hustle Show, Side Hustle Nation. It's an awesome show. And if you're in your W-2 job, you want to get out, obviously, house hacking, real estate investing is a great thing, but it's relatively passive. You're going to have some extra time to kind of maybe pick up another side hustle to make some more so you can then, funnel that into your real estate investment. So Nick, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. It's been a pleasure, and it's always good to see you. And we'll be in touch somewhat soon.
Thanks, Nick.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you, man. All right, Allie, that was Nick Loper. What did you think of Nick?
Today's episode was really cool. It's slightly different from what we normally do. But it's interesting, just like the amount of stories that he knows of and different side hustles that people wouldn't ever really think of otherwise, like piano tuning, you know? That's so cool that you can literally do anything, any service that you find a hard time getting assistance for. Why not try to turn that into a side hustle yourself?
Yeah, I love it. And just like he said, like, most people don't know what they're passionate about. Not because they're not passionate about anything, but because they haven't tried anything. And so go try something, do it for a couple months. If you like it, boom, you've got your side hustle. If not, you've wasted 3 months, you can cross that thing off your list, you scratched your itch, and go to the next thing. It's the first time I've ever heard that advice, and when he said it, I was like, yeah, yeah, that's the answer. That's like the answer as to why no one feels passionate about anything. And so can't say that enough. And yeah, he's got a little bit of a little fun real estate story in there, which I really liked about the lease option, something that we haven't really talked about much. But something that, hey, if you've got investment property and you want to sell on a lease option, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think I'd be a little bit cautious to buy on a lease option personally, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Hallie?
Lease options can be super predatory. Like there are some people that I know of um that I know that they purposely do lease options knowing that the tenants won't ever be able to get their credit back in time in 2 years, or sometimes even less. But there are some others that do it like a little bit in a more honest way. So like giving them 4 or 5 years to be able to give that tenant enough time to actually fix their credit. I think lease options are like a very slippery slope. But there, of course, are ways to make it a win-win for both parties. There's usually a reason where they can't purchase a home yet. One, because of their credit. So hook them up with a lender, and then work with them throughout the time. Like, hey, how's your credit now? Have periodic check-ins and just be a good person, like it'll come back to you.
Totally. Yeah. I think I double down on what you said there with like, don't take advantage of people, right? Especially people in less fortunate situations than you. Like we don't need to prey on the weak. I think it's like you really should be uplifting and help them out. And I think that's why I've strayed from it too, is like, okay, I see how it can benefit me, but if I'm benefiting at somebody else's expense, then that doesn't feel good to me. That's not a win.
Right.
Like, it's gotta be a win-win. And so if they're in which case, like if I did the 2-year lease option and they wanted to extend for another 2 years, like I probably would do it. Right, like if they truly did want to own the house, but they couldn't qualify for the mortgage yet. So yeah, there's ways to do it well. It's kind of like seller financing too, and all that stuff. Like there's so many different ways to negotiate seller financing, and some of the ways you can really kind of mess a seller up. In some ways, you can actually give them a good deal. And so I just think acting within a moral compass is extremely important.
Always. Yeah.
Well, if you made it all the way to the end, guys, I want to just say thank you so much for listening all the way through. It's been a pleasure coming on the show. It was a pleasure interviewing Nick and also seeing you, Allie. If you haven't already, please, please, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Spotify, on iTunes, on wherever you're listening to this. It tremendously helps us and gets more awesome guests like Nick on the show. So with that being said, we will see you all next week.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.